Okay, we're in Luke chapter 14. We were looking at these two little parables regarding our obligation to count the cost, and really talking about what does Jesus require of his followers. And you'll notice that that verse 25 begins with great multitudes following him. It's excited about him. But anytime there's a big crowd, there's people with all kinds of motivations and intentions. It reminds you of the parable of the sower, in which we sometimes like to talk about the soils. There's different kinds of hearts. What are people looking for when it comes to their lives and to religion? Some of these people, I'm sure, just like to hear him talk. They just, on more than one occasion, the New Testament says nobody ever spake like this man. Others wanted to see these miracles that he was performing. In John chapter 6, he said, this group, you're just following me around because of what? The loaves and the fishes. Others saw him as a physical Messiah. He was going to throw off the Roman tyranny. In fact, in John chapter 6 also, they wanted to make him a king. So people with all kinds of ideas about who he was and what they wanted from him. But Jesus was very honest, and he didn't want anybody to be following him for the wrong reasons. He didn't say these things to discourage, but he did say them to instruct us about commitment and what he's about, and his kingdom's about. And he doesn't want and he doesn't need half-hearted followers. And so he doesn't want discipleship based on shallow emotions and enthusiasm. So he turns and he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife, children, brothers and sisters, yes, in his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. That sounds pretty harsh. Whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower, talking probably most likely a vineyard, tower used for protection to ward off those who would steal, so forth, place to stay out of the heat, does not sit down first and count the cost, and I'm sure he had seen this on occasion, being in the construction business, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he's laid the foundation is not able to finish. All who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another does not sit down first to consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him and comes with 20? Do I have the element of surprise? Do I have a better trained army? Do I have do I have the high ground, you might say, in years past? Do I have whatever? What advantage do I have? If I don't, and I've only got 10, he's got 20, and everything else being equal, while the other's still a great way off, he sends a delegation, asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Well, I think obviously the first thing we have to talk about, and we kind of barely got into this last week, but let's talk about the kind of hatred that Jesus demands. Sometimes it's easy when we read this, universally, and I've done this too, flippantly, in Bible class, explain it this way. What do we normally say? When he says to hate these people, what do we usually say? That means to love less. I'm not sure that that's the point at all. In fact, that probably violates a lot of other things that Jesus said. Can I love people less? Is that my goal, to love people less? Less than what? It kind of dulls the edge of the command, if you will. There's a paradox here, no question. But let's look at some of his teachings. Is Jesus saying here, I'd like to crush the tender relationships of human friendship and love? Is that what he's out to do? After all, in Matthew 5, he said, we're not just to love the people that we like, we're to love who? We're to love our enemies. He said, Mark chapter 7, to honor our parents. In fact, when he was on the cross, he looked down at his best friend and said, what? What do I want you to do? Take care of my mom. Matthew, go back to Matthew 5. He said, look, you talk about murder in the Old Testament. I'm telling you, if you do what? In your heart. If you hate your brother. So we're talking about loving less. So if you hate your brother, you murdered him. So you look at the whole context of his life. I mean, even around children, little children, you know. He'd take them up in his arms. I don't know if it's about loving people less. So, some kind of diminished love. I mean, let's think about this. You say, well, I don't know. Okay, how about Ephesians 5:25? What does that say? Husbands, love your wives how much? As Christ loved the church? Now, wait a minute. How can I love them less with a diminished love if I'm to love my wife as much as he loved the church? That sounds like a lot of love to me. Pretty self-sacrificial. We're to have a sincere love of the brethren in 1 Peter 1. Love one another earnestly from the heart. I don't think we love the Lord more by loving people less. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. And maybe I'm going to quit saying it that way. Well, hate just means to love less. No, I don't think we love him more by loving people less. So how do we define this? Well, it's defined for us in the passage, is it not? We're talking figuratively here. Does not hate his wife, his father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters. Yes, now here's the key. And his own life also. Well, let's think about the second greatest commandment. First greatest commandment is to love God, right? All your heart, soul, mind, strength. What's the second? Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? All right? I'm going to love my neighbor as myself. Well, what are the kinds of things that I should love about myself? And what are the kinds of things I should hate about myself? Let's look at it in those terms. What should I love? And conversely, if I love my neighbor as myself, what are the kinds of things I should love about my neighbor and other people? And what are the kinds of things I should hate that I see in other people? Maybe that's the way I should ask it. I mean, in what sense? He says he must hate his own life also. Well, what about my life should I hate? I don't think this is complicated. Yes. Bad things. Things that are impure. Things that violate God's will. Those are the kinds of things about my life that I should hate. The kinds of things about my life that I should love and in other people is when I see purity and selflessness. But when I see greediness and selfishness, I don't love those things. In fact, God doesn't love those things. You know what? How does God feel about sin? We say this all the time, right? God doesn't hate people. He hates sin. Well, shouldn't we? Whatever is pure and right in people, shouldn't I love that? Whatever is unclean and self-indulgent, shouldn't I hate that? To the point where if a man does come between me and my Lord, if I do have to make a choice between natural affection and devotion to Christ, what choice must I make? Well, I have to choose Christ, right? So yes, in a sense in this statement, I do have to put, no question I have to put Christ first, but I think we kind of do it a disservice if we want to talk about some kind of diminished love toward other people. When I'm told to love my wife as much as he loved the church. Well, how diminished was Christ's love toward the church? Not much. Not any, right? So I think the challenge is here, What do we love about other people? Well, what do we love in ourselves? What do we hate that's in other people? What do we hate that's in ourselves? Well, he's given a warning about superficial discipleship and enthusiasm. And he's honest about it. Unlike, we talked about last week, look, he's not an armed services recruiting office, okay? Now, if I walk into and nothing against our military, but if I walk into the closest, if I'm 18 years old, just out of high school, and I got no future, and I walk into the local recruiting office, what's this guy going to tell me? He's going to tell me, man, basic training's tough. And living life in the military now, there's a lot of things you better consider before you sign up. Is that what they say? Man, this will change your life. It'll make you a man. Give you purpose. They're going to play it up. All salesmen do, right? Doesn't matter what you're buying. But Jesus said, look, I'm going to shoot straight with you here. You got to count the cost if you're going to follow me. Not that I don't want you to follow me, but I want you to be able to finish. And I want you to be an asset in the kingdom and not a drain. So, what kind of questions do we ask ourselves, or should we ask ourselves, if we're counting the cost? I mean, it says count the cost, so what should I ask myself? What are some things maybe I should consider? What are some things I'm willing to do? Well, first of all, we know one of the first requisites of discipleship is self-denial, right? If any man wants to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Well, am I able to deny self? Right? That'd be a good question. No longer living to please self. How did Paul put it in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20? How did he say it? I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. The life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith of the Son of God who loved me, gave himself for me. I nail my passions and lusts to the cross. I like what one commentator said. It's not that God wants X amount of your time and your money and your service. What does he really want? What did the Macedonians give him when Paul was writing in 2 Corinthians 8 to encourage those people in their monetary giving? Yeah. He said, look, you want to look at those people as an example. They first did what? Gave of themselves. First gave themselves. That's what he wants. He wants us. The other stuff, of course, will just follow along. So I have to ask myself, am I willing to deny myself? Number two, I think, is just as important. Am I willing to abide by his teachings? Obedience. That's what true discipleship involves. John 8:11, if you continue in my word, then are you truly my disciples? You say you want to follow me, but are you willing to do what I say? This always reminds me, everybody turn to Jeremiah. And this is the way we tend to be as people. I see so much of this in us. I mean, I'll say us, I don't mean anybody here in particular, but just people in general. Look in Jeremiah. In Jeremiah, Nebuchadnezzar takes Jerusalem in about verse 39. Chapter 39. He takes Jerusalem. And then he either kills most of the leaders and the smart people and the rich people, or he takes them captive to Babylon. And he leaves the poorest of the land so that the place doesn't become overrun. And he makes a guy named Gedaliah governor. And he leaves even some of his soldiers behind. And he says, well, look, you'll be in charge now. And so after Nebuchadnezzar's gone, his army's gone, and Gedaliah's in charge, the captains of some of the Jewish forces that had been out in the field, they weren't in the city when it fell, they come to him and about, I guess, chapter 40, notice in about verse 13, Johanan, the son of Kareah, and all the captains of the forces that were in the fields came to Gedaliah and said, don't you know that Baalis, the king of the Ammonites, has sent Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, to murder you? And then Johanan says, look, just give me the word and I'll take care of him. Nobody will know. I'll execute him. I'll assassinate him. And you won't have to worry about this. And Gedaliah says, no, you're not. I don't believe that. I think he's a good guy. Well, he wasn't a good guy. He shows up one day, chapter 41, with his fellows, about 10 of his servants, and murders Gedaliah and everybody that's there with him. Well, the Jews that are left then are thinking, what? This guy just murdered the guy that Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man in this part of the world, just left in charge. So what's going to happen? He's going to come back with his army and he's going to kill us all in retribution. And so they said, look, well, they chased down Ishmael and they recovered all the people that he took captive, but he got away. Well, now they got to decide what to do. So look about verse 16. They depart and they dwell near Bethlehem as they went on their way to Egypt, the Bible says, because of the Chaldeans, for they were afraid of them, because Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, had murdered Gedaliah, the son of Achikam. Now, all the captains of the forces, chapter 42, they come to Jeremiah and say, please let our petition be acceptable to you and pray for us to the Lord your God for all this remnant, that the Lord your God may show us the way in which we should walk and the thing we should do. Now, Jeremiah, you go ask God what we're supposed to do. And whatever he says, what? We're going to do it. And Jeremiah says, okay, I'll do it. And they said, verse 5 of chapter 42, let the Lord be a true and faithful witness if we do not do according to everything which the Lord your God sends us by you, whether it's pleasing or displeasing, whether we like it or don't like it, whether it's difficult or not, we're going to do it. We're going to obey. So 10 days later, verse 7, God comes to Jeremiah and he says, here's what you tell him. Don't go to Egypt. I don't want you going back to Egypt. I brought you out of Egypt one time. I don't want you going back there. You stay in the land and I will protect you. Nebuchadnezzar will not punish you for what happened. But stay. But if you go to Egypt, I'll destroy you. Well, look at verse 19. Look what Jeremiah says. The Lord has said concerning you, O remnant of Judah, do not go to Egypt. Know certainly that I have admonished you this day, for you were hypocrites in your hearts when you sent me to the Lord, saying, pray for us and everything that he says we'll do. For I've declared it to you, but you've not obeyed. Now therefore know that you'll die by the sword, by famine and pestilence. Now notice what they said in chapter 43. Was Jeremiah right in saying they were hypocrites in their hearts? Now it happened when Jeremiah stopped speaking, that Azariah the son of Hoshai and Johanan the son of Kareah and all the proud men spoke to Jeremiah and said, you speak falsely. The Lord our God has not sent you to say, do not go to Egypt. Okay, so they come to Jeremiah and they say, look, you go pray to God. You ask him what he wants us to do. We'll do whatever he says. And then when Jeremiah comes back and tells him something they didn't like, they just want him to go to God and come back and say, okay, go to Egypt. Right? That's why he says you're hypocrites in your heart. But he came back and he said something else and they said, you're lying. I know we asked you to go ask him, but you're lying. Does that sound familiar? Oh, I want to obey God. I want to do what he says until he tells me to do something I don't like. Right? Something that's difficult, something that I don't want to do, some change I have to make, or whatever it might be. And of course, they went down to Egypt. They got down there. God told Jeremiah, hey, take these stones, bury them right here in this spot, and you tell these people, I'm going to bring Nebuchadnezzar down here. And he's going to set up his throne right here with a canopy over it. Because he's coming down here, and I'm going to let him destroy Egypt. And you too. But they wouldn't obey. So am I just willing to do what he says? And we have a problem with that. Well, in the church sometimes, certainly in the denominational world, and in the world in general. And of course, am I willing to follow through to the end? I should ask myself that. You know, a lot of people start out. How many people you reckon, if you're in this congregation or maybe from another, how many people, if you've been a Christian very long, I've been maybe close to 50 years. I wonder if I could count. If I couldn't sit down and count the number of people I've known, Christians, when I was growing up at Knight Arnold, moved out here, that are not faithful, left the church. I'm sure you can too. Am I willing to finish, go to the end, no matter what happens? Remember that rocky soil? Was it the rocky soil? Sun came up, things got a little hard, what? Fall away. And of course we know from Hebrews and other places that the Christian life is not a sprint. Right? It's a marathon. Do you know the thing, how long is a marathon? Yeah, 26.2 miles, right? Well, you know, you could run 26 miles with a 26.2, couldn't you? Still not finish? I just can't go any further. It's going to stop right here. I've had it. That sounds kind of sad. Go 26 miles and not finish the last 0.2 of a mile. But people do that. People do that in Christianity as well. You know? Go all that way. Well, Jesus, again, not to discourage, but he was honest. And frankly, we kind of understand this principle. If I want to be a doctor, do I have to sacrifice a little bit? How many years do they have to go to school? And then they, then they have to do residencies and maybe fellowships and all this. And next thing you know, before you actually are kind of out on your own, unsupervised, you're like, even if you started college at 18, you're 30 years old, right? So, what about world-class athletes? Do they sacrifice a little? Yeah, they do. It's easy to dream about being successful at something, but it's another thing to put the work into it. Same thing for scholars, people that are up late at night or early in the morning studying. I don't think he's saying here it's better not to begin than to begin and fall or fail, but I think he's saying it's better not to begin with a big flourish of, trumpets, something that it invites a downfall. Just be determined. Be determined. But we have to count the cost. Any questions or comments about this one? All right. Well, let's turn over to Matthew 7, because I know this is one everybody likes because you've been singing about it in Vacation Bible School since you were a kid. right? The wise man built his house upon a rock. Rains came down, floods came up. What happened? Stood firm. Foolish man built his house upon sand. Rains came down, floods came up. What happened? Splat. Isn't that what we say? There's two interesting accounts, though, of this parable, and they're just a little different because one's told by a Jewish writer to a Jewish audience. One is told by a Gentile to a Gentile audience. So look at Matthew 7 and look at the context, though. In this chapter, Jesus emphasizes, and we're getting toward the end of the Sermon on the Mount, right? And what is he emphasizing toward the end? Yeah, he's emphasizing the fact of the necessity of obedience. He's told them all these things in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, and he gives three contrasts toward the end. The first contrast is the two ways, right? We got verse 13 of Matthew 7. You got the narrow gate. You got the wide, right? Many go in the wide because they're not willing to obey. And then you've got this whole thing about the two trees. Well, how do you tell the difference between the trees? By their fruit. Well, now you've got the two builders. And this parable is absolutely about the necessity of obedience. Look the way he begins in verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say unto me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many wonderful works or wonders in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Therefore, connecting to what he just said, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these things of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. In Palestine, you had these dry riverbeds and gullies in the summer. So that's why this one is more tailored to the people that Matthew's writing to. They knew this scene. Well, you're not going to go out there in one of those gullies or dry riverbeds. Think about the flooding that just happened in Texas. You're not going to go out there and build your house on that dry riverbed. They're called wadis, or in that gully, just because it's dry in the summer, because you know what's going to happen in the winter, right? The rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. It's interesting too here, and so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings that the people were astonished at his teaching. For he taught them as one having authority. Jesus just got through telling them, you have to obey me. He's talking about one having authority. You have to obey me. But look at the account over in Luke. A little bit different, because it's more universal in scope, because Luke is writing to people that live in other parts of the world, Roman Empire. Maybe not specific to the same situation. But Jesus then also begins with this saying in verse 46 of Luke chapter 6. And why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things which I say? Obedience is what we're talking about. Whoever comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house. Now notice, you would dig deep because you're looking for what? You're looking for rock. But that's a lot of work, and it's pretty inconvenient. When the flood rose and the stream beat vehemently against that house and could not shake it, for it was, and he built it on this rock, on this foundation. But he who heard and did nothing is like a man who built his house on the earth without a foundation. And the ruin of that house was great. it was too much work. I don't want to go down to the rock. That's pretty inconvenient. I just want to get this done. So we're talking about obedience. Probably the strongest lesson he gave on it. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does them, I'm the authority. You have to obey me. And here's what you're like if you do, and here's what you're like if you don't. We see this in other places, right? Luke chapter 8. My mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. John 13, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. You're my friends if you do what I command you. John 15, 14. We understand that, but we kind of forget it sometimes. So, obedience. So what are some reasons, as we look at this parable, what are some reasons that what are some reasons we don't obey? Give me some. What are some reasons that either people in general don't obey, or even we sometimes ourselves finding that we don't obey? Some commentators I like made the point, and psychologists talk about this. When's the best time to do something when you know you need to do something? Yeah, right then. Right then. Right? Because what happens? Man, life happens. Tomorrow's another day. Doesn't seem as urgent tomorrow as it did today, to go talk to that person or visit this person or do whatever we need to be doing. We don't act at once. We're here on Sunday morning, but man, we're tired. We get home Sunday afternoon, so what are we going to do? We're going to rest. And then we get up on Monday, and what happens? We got to go to work. Get home from that and we're tired. Next thing you know, Sunday again, right? It happens to us all. We don't do it when we should. Therefore, we don't do it at all. And, we've got some people here that are good at this. I mean, I've talked to some deacons and other young adults here that if they find out somebody needs something or there's an opportunity to influence somebody with the gospel, they'll say, hey, we'll go today. Or I'll grab so-and-so and we'll go tonight or tomorrow. Because if you don't, then a lot of times it just doesn't happen. So it's always good to do it when the mood strikes, as we say. And then, of course, I think inconvenience is another one. Look, doing things for other people, taking us out of our own schedule and routine, doing things for our own selves and our families is inconvenient. It costs extra time, extra money. Maybe I had something planned. So I'll obey Christ as long as it's convenient, pleasant. But when it's not, duty's not always easy. And this guy, I'm sure, thought, man, going down through that earth and getting to that rock, man, that's just not convenient. And I think that's a big one. It takes something to say, hey, I had this plan tonight or tomorrow or whatever, but this other matter is more important. The spiritual matter is more important. It's more pressing. What I had planned to do in the backyard or in the yard or in the house or whatever, it's just got to wait. And that's tough. Inconvenience. What about just a failure to consider the future or the long term? Think about these builders. Who was thinking long term? If I'm the guy building on the sand in the wadi or the dry riverbed, am I thinking about winter? Am I thinking about the rains that are going to come in a few months? No. I'm just thinking about right then. I need shelter from the heat and the weather. I'm going to build right here, right now. Right? It's all about right now. And man, we are like that. People are like that. Our whole political system is geared toward the here and now. Politicians will not do what's necessary for the good of the country or their constituents in the long run because it doesn't affect their ability to get reelected right now. They will promise the moon to people, and they will break the bank and break the country giving away money because who cares what's going to happen 40 years from now? I will not be a congressman anymore. Matter of fact, I will be dead. Right? And the media, man, they just, they love it because it's misery. They love misery, and misery is all about right now. So I'll give you an example. And you don't have to agree or whatever just with the policy, but I'll just give you an example, whether you agree with it, whether we agree with tariffs or not. The fact of the matter is, our founding fathers believed in tariffs, and they practiced them. And we as a country practiced them up until about 50 or 60 years ago. Then all of a sudden, I guess we decided just to let the rest of the world take advantage of us. So that's fine. So the current president comes in and says, well, I'm going to put in tariffs. What do we hear? What's wrong with the tariffs? Now, in the long run, even in the short run, it's made a bunch of money. But in the long run, what is his goal in the long run? He's trying to help business in this country who've been destroyed because other countries won't take our stuff or they overprice it where we can't sell it, but we take everything they have. So we've had whole industries and people lose their jobs, so he's trying to build them back. On the other hand, it's also the case that frankly we're just talking about, we run this deficit all the time where we buy more than what we sell. So he's trying to correct that. Well, you don't correct something that's taken 50 or 60 years and you hadn't done it. You don't correct it overnight. It takes time. But all the stories you get on the mainstream news is what? Well, this poor Sally over here, inflation is just going to kill. We don't even know. They were saying that the day after he implemented them. That's impossible to know. But you scare people by saying, well, look, it might be tough in the short term. I don't know. The question is it worth it, the long term? So people say, I don't want to live the Christian life because it's tough. The question is, it might be tough in the short term. Was it tough for Job in the short term? You know anybody that's gone through the short term like Job? But how did it turn out for Job in the long run? And that's what we don't, nobody, it's like our tax laws and all that are made so that people will spend their money rather than save it. We have the worst savings rate of any civilized nation in the world. Japanese, all these, they save 10, 15, 20% of their income. We save 1 or 2%. We spend it as soon as we get it. That is short-term thinking and living. It's not long-term. It's not saying, hey, well, what am I going to do when I'm, 50, 60, 70, whatever? Well, I'll just spend it all right now. So whether you agree with the policies or not, that's not the point. The point I'm making is that it's the way it is in anything in life, and it's the way it is in religion. Are you thinking short term or long term? What's the long term? And so, things might not always be easy when we obey. This builder on the sand certainly didn't think about it. Students do it in school, right? Go all semester, don't study, and then what? Well, I'll just show up for the exam. Or maybe the night before they panic and say, I think I'll cram. That's short-term thinking, not long-term. So, times of testing will come, like it did for these builders. But question is, are we prepared and are we obedient? 2 Corinthians 5:10, we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive that which he has done in his body, whether it be good or whether it be bad. We can be careless and slipshod, live any old way we want to, like the guy that built on the sand. But we better be building on the foundation of Christ, and that requires obedience. We're going to finish this study of parables next week. We're going to look at the Judgment Day and some things about the afterlife. And then we'll move on to something else.